The city moved like a restless tide. Horns blaring, voices echoing between high rises, the blur of footsteps against damp sidewalks. In the middle of this chaos, just off the edge of a busy square, a young woman knelt on the pavement, paint-streaked, fingers clutching a worn brush. Her canvas was small, her talent vast. Her name was Lena Marlowe, and though no gallery bore her name, strangers stopped to watch her bring souls to life with every stroke. Her blue scarf fluttered in the wind, a tattered thing that once belonged to her mother. It was the only relic Lena had of a family long gone, and she wore it like armor. Day after day, she sat near the subway entrance with her easel and tin box for tips, sketching strangers for a few coins or selling her original paintings to tourists who rarely looked her in the eye. And yet, she smiled. "Would you like a portrait, sir?" she asked a man in a navy trench coat, his eyes buried in his phone. He shook his head and kept walking. A woman dropped a few coins into her tip box without looking, distracted by her toddler's tantrum. Lena thanked her anyway, wiping a smudge from her cheek. She wasn't bitter. Her art was her lifeline, sometimes literally. At night, she stayed in a shared room at a low-income women's shelter on 49th Street. Meals were donated, and her art supplies were bought second-hand or gifted by a retired painter named Miriam, who lived upstairs and believed in her more than anyone ever had. "Keep painting, Lena," Miriam would say. "Someday someone will really see you." But Lena had stopped hoping for that day, until he came. It was late afternoon when Victor Hale first noticed her. The city's light had shifted to amber, bathing the sidewalk in warm hues. He had no reason to be walking that day. His driver usually took him everywhere, but on that particular Thursday something compelled him to step out near the square and walk. Victor was a man of enormous wealth. His empire, real estate, shipping, tech, spanned continents. His suits were custom, his watches vintage, and his presence sharp like a scalpel. But today he moved slowly, his silver hair tousled by the breeze, his cane clicking softly against the pavement. Then he saw the painting. It was perched beside Lena's easel, displayed on a simple wooden stand. The portrait showed a girl of about 20 sitting by a lake, smiling gently. Her hair was pulled into a braid over one shoulder, and her eyes were filled with a quiet kind of longing. Victor froze. That was Isabel, his daughter. She had drowned 12 years ago. His world had shattered that day. The grief had cracked him open, and though time dulled the edge, it never filled the hole. Victor stared at the painting, his hand trembling ever so slightly. "How do you know her?" he whispered. Lena looked up, startled. I'm sorry, sir," he gestured to the portrait. "That girl, where did you see her?" "Oh," Lena said softly. "She's not real. I imagined her." Victor's face paled. "Impossible. I just painted her a few nights ago. I saw an old photograph in a magazine. Maybe she was in the background. Or maybe she came from a dream, I don't know. She felt familiar." Victor didn't speak for a long moment. His eyes stayed fixed on the painting. It was her. Every freckle, every curve of her lips, even the silver locket Isabel used to wear. But this girl had never posed for Lena. She couldn't have. "May I buy it?" he asked finally. Lena blinked. "Oh, of course, it's $50. Victor reached into his coat, pulled out his wallet, and handed her a crisp $500 bill. Lena's eyes widened. "Sir, this is too much." He raised a hand. "Keep it. And if you ever paint someone like her again, please let me know." He handed her a business card. It was simple. V.H. Hale & Co. in gold print. As he walked away, painting in hand, Lena sat frozen. She turned the card over in her fingers, reading the name again. Hale. It tugged at something deep inside her, something half-remembered and aching. That night, Lena returned to the shelter and placed the painting money in a worn envelope. It would cover a week's food and a few more canvas boards. But her thoughts kept returning to the man, the sadness in his eyes, the way he stared at the portrait like it had haunted him. "Victor Hale," she whispered into the darkness. "Why did you look at me like that?" Meanwhile, in a penthouse, apartment high above the city, Victor sat alone in his study, the portrait propped against his desk. He didn't sleep. He couldn't. He studied the brushwork, the color choices, the softness around the girl's eyes. There was no doubt Lena hadn't just painted someone like Isabel. She had painted her. The next day, Victor asked his assistant to find everything they could about Lena Marlowe. It didn't take long. There wasn't much to find. No family, no listed address, no employment history. Just a birth record. Lena Ann Marlowe, born in 1998, adopted at 2 months from St. Mary's Home for Infants. Victor's blood went cold. He knew that name. His late wife, Catherine, had a younger sister, Elaine, who had become estranged from the family in the late 90s after a bitter disagreement over money. Elaine had disappeared with her newborn daughter. That child would have been born in 1998. Victor stared at the birth certificate again. The mother's name was listed as Elaine Marlowe. It couldn't be. Could it? 2 days later, Lena sat, in her usual spot, painting a soft sunrise over a field of flowers. She loved creating scenes she'd never seen in real life, peaceful places where nothing hurt and no one left. Her blue scarf flapped in the breeze again as crowds passed her. By a sleek black car pulled up across the street. Victor stepped out, but this time he wasn't alone. His assistant, a man in his 30s named Bryce, followed behind him. They approached carefully. "Miss Marlowe," Victor said. "May I have a moment?" Lena stood, wiping her hands on a cloth. "Yes, of course. I'd like to speak with you privately. I believe I've discovered something important about your past." Lena's heartbeat quickened. "My past?" He nodded solemnly. "Would you come with me?" They drove to a quiet cafe. Victor ordered tea for them both and began slowly. "I believe you may be my niece." Lena stared. He explained the family, rift, Elaine's disappearance, the adoption record, the timeline, the painting. Lena listened, silent, her eyes wide. "I had no idea," she whispered. "My mother. She never talked about her family. I didn't even know her full name until she passed." Victor reached into his coat and handed her an old photograph. 2 young women standing in a garden. One was his late wife. The other, unmistakably, was Elaine. And in her arms, a baby girl with a blue scarf. Lena's lips trembled. "That scarf. It's mine." Victor swallowed hard. Then I was right. For the first time in 12 years, Victor smiled. Not with pride, but with hope. He reached across the table and took her hand gently. "I lost a daughter, Lena, but I found family again. If you'll let me, I'd like to bring you home." Lena stared at him, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't want money, Mr. Hale." "I'm not offering money," he said. "I'm offering a place, a family, and maybe a chance for your art to be seen by the world." Her eyes filled with tears. She had spent her whole life painting beauty into a world that never noticed her. Now someone had finally seen her. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, revealing a world Lena had only seen in dreams. Victor Hale's penthouse overlooked the entire city. Polished marble floors stretched beneath crystal chandeliers, and windows from floor to ceiling bathed the space in golden afternoon light. Every inch of the place felt like another world, one where power, beauty, and silence all lived in harmony. Lena stood quietly, her blue scarf fluttering from her shoulder like a defiant badge in this palace of wealth. "You'll stay in the guest suite for now," Victor said gently as he led her through the wide hallway. "Unless you find somewhere you'd prefer. You're not obligated to live here, Lena. I just want you to feel safe." She nodded slowly, still overwhelmed. "It's all so much." "It is," he said. I understand. I've lived in it for decades and still don't feel at home sometimes. Victor left her with a housekeeper named Dana, who showed Lena the guest suite, a room bigger than the entire shelter she'd lived in. The walls were soft ivory, the bed plush, and a small balcony looked over a private garden 10 stories below. When she was alone, Lena sat on the edge of the bed, her sketchbook in her lap. Her fingers traced the edge of the page as if grounding herself. She hadn't painted since the day Victor found her. Her world had shifted so quickly, from dirt-stained sidewalks to marble floors, and her soul hadn't caught up yet. Over. The next week, Victor introduced Lena to more of his world. He brought her to a private gallery he owned and insisted she display her work. They deserve to be seen, he said firmly. To Lena's astonishment, within 3 days, several of her pieces had been purchased, not out of pity, but genuine admiration. One buyer even requested a commission. Your colors speak. I want something that feels like home, the woman said. It was the first time Lena's work had made someone else feel what she always felt while painting, but not everyone welcomed her so warmly. One morning, Lena was having tea in the penthouse atrium when a sharp voice cut through the air. So, you're the street girl everyone's whispering about. Lena turned to see a tall woman in her 30s with raven black hair pulled into a tight bun and a designer coat draped across her heels echoed on the floor like judgment with every step. I'm Clarissa Hale, the woman said, extending a hand with the stiffness of formality. Victor's niece. Well, his other niece, I suppose. Lena stood, shaking her hand. Nice to meet you. I suppose it must be, Clarissa said, her smile not reaching her eyes. You've come from quite far, haven't you? Street painting to penthouse, that's quite the fairy tale. Lena held her gaze. I didn't come looking for a fairy tale. Just answers. Clarissa's smile thinned. Well, just remember, fairy tales usually end at midnight. She turned and walked away. Lena sat back down, her hands trembling slightly. She had expected skepticism. But Clarissa's coldness was deeper. It was protective, territorial. Victor later explained that Clarissa was the daughter of his late brother and had been groomed for a corporate role within the Hale Empire. She ran the company's art foundation and had long expected to inherit more than just a title. She's ambitious, Victor said. But she's not cruel. Lena wasn't so sure. A week later, Lena was invited to her first Hale Foundation Gala, a lavish event held at the city's grandest art museum. It was to unveil the foundation's next initiative, empowering underprivileged artists, ironically enough. Victor encouraged Lena to present one of her pieces. Let them see where you came from, he said, and who you are. She chose her newest painting, a quiet landscape, a lake under twilight, 2 birds soaring above the water, painted in memory of her mother. The night of the gala, Lena wore a pale blue evening dress provided by Dana, and of course her scarf. The contrast raised some eyebrows, but Victor beamed with pride when she entered the hall. You carry your story with you, he whispered. Don't ever put it down. The event buzzed with wealthy donors, art critics, and socialites. Some gave Lena polite nods. Others ignored her entirely. Clarissa, unsurprisingly, approached with a wine glass and a cool stare. Lovely piece, she said, eyeing the painting. Very sentimental. Lena smiled. It's personal. Clarissa leaned in. Just be careful, cousin. Victor's always been good at rescuing strays, but he loses interest quickly. Lena stiffened but said nothing. Later that night, as speeches were made and applause rang out, Victor introduced Lena to the stage. She reminded me of something I had forgotten, he told the crowd. That art isn't about price tags or prestige. It's about connection, about memory. Lena Marlowe reminded me of my daughter and gave me back a piece of my soul. The room was quiet. Then applause erupted. Lena, overwhelmed, stepped back into the wings of the stage. Her heart pounded, not from fear but from something deeper, purpose, recognition. And for the first time, a whisper in her mind said, "You belong here." But the moment didn't last. The next morning, Lena was awoken by Victor's assistant, Bryce. "There's something you need to see," he said, grim. He handed her a folded tabloid. The headline read, "Heiress or Hustler? Street Artist's Secret Ties to Hale Fortune Under Question." Below it was a blurry photo of Lena in the shelter, another of her taking the $500 bill from Victor, and a list of anonymous claims suggesting she had faked her identity to infiltrate the Hale family. Lena's heart sank. We know," Bryce said. "But Clarissa is calling for an internal investigation. Victor is furious. He's trying to shut it down." Tears welled in her eyes. "Why would she do this?" "Because you're a threat," Bryce said quietly. "You have something money can't buy. Victor's love. She's afraid you'll take everything." That evening, Victor returned from the board meeting, tired and furious. "They're demanding DNA proof," he said. I offered voluntarily. "I know who you are." Lena nodded, shaken. "I'll do it too. I want the truth just as much as you do." A week passed in painful silence. Lena stayed indoors, painting feverishly to drown the anxiety. Rumors spread. The Foundation's board split an opinion. Even some media outlets turned against Victor for letting sentiment cloud business. Then at last the results arrived. Victor opened the envelope himself in his study, Lena standing beside him. He read the document. Then again. Then looked up, tears in his eyes. "You're Elaine's daughter," he whispered. "It's true. It's all true." Lena gasped. "So, you're my niece," he said. "By blood and heart." He handed her the document. Her hands trembled, but he wasn't finished. "There's something else," he said softly. "When Elaine left the family, she renounced her inheritance. But after Isabel died, I changed my will. Half of everything I have, and I wrote to go to the next living female heir in the family. That's you." Lena's breath stopped. I don't want. It's not about wanting," he said gently. "It's about right. You carry her memory. You carry this family forward. That's not money. That's legacy." The news spread quickly. Victor held a press conference and proudly introduced Lena as his legal heir, silencing tabloids and Clarissa alike. Clarissa never apologized, but she never spoke against Lena again. And Lena, she never let the world change her. She refused to leave the shelter until she could build one better. She opened a free art school for young creatives from low-income neighborhoods. She painted every week in the square, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. People lined up for her portraits now, not for the fame, but because they felt seen. 1 year later, her first solo exhibit opened. It was titled, "The Girl with the Blue Scarf." The final painting in the gallery was of 2 women, one older, one younger, sitting beside a lake under a twilight sky, hand in hand. And at the bottom, in delicate paint, were the words, "To the family we find after being lost."